But you know what? I'm into the drama because once I listened to this shit in audiobook, I was like, tea. Every time some shit went down, I was like, tea. Welcome to another reading and travel vlog where I will be taking you through Tennessee, San Francisco, and Los Angeles with me. During this time, I read a gothic book that was one of my anticipated reads for the year. I read a coming of age story set in college, and I read a fan favorite book, which is Daisy Jones. Technically, I reread it because I first read the book a long time ago, did not like it, but this time I have drastically changed my opinion. Before we get into the video, I do want to say thank you to a Book of the Month for sponsoring. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors for you to discover. Every month, their team goes through hundreds of book titles and then curates a selection of 5 to 7 of the best books for you to read from, and then you can choose them to be delivered to your door. It's totally risk-free, so you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged. I picked 2 books for this month. The first one is Paper Names because May is Asian Heritage Month, so it would be very fitting for me to pick an Asian author to read from. And then this book, I actually have never heard about before. It's called Did You Hear About Kitty Carr? It's about a woman who chooses to be white in order to navigate fame. So it takes place during old Hollywood. Reading the synopsis actually gave me Evelyn Hugo vibes, which is why I was interested in picking it up. If you want to check out the other books that they've selected for the month, you can go ahead and click on the link in my description. And they also have a special code that they're running throughout the month. New members can sign up to get their first box for $5 if you use the code FLOWERS. Also, they launched audiobooks last month, so you can use your Book of the Month credits to either get a new hardcover book or an audiobook. And now let's go ahead and check out the vlog. Hello, I am updating from the middle of the woods in Tennessee. I'm staying at this fancy cabin right now for my friend's birthday. This is probably the fanciest Airbnb I've ever stayed in. On the basement floor, they have a game room, an indoor pool, a hot tub outside, and a theater room where you can watch movies or play video games. We were playing Mario Kart last night, and each individual screen to play Mario Kart was like its own TV screen. It's very fitting that I'm in a fancy, luxurious home at the moment though, because I have been reading The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and I read a huge chunk of it on my way to Tennessee. So I'm about past the halfway point right now, and this is one of my anticipated books for the year. And this ended up being the book for one of my book clubs with the people that I ventured with in Thailand. It's about a mysterious woman who's an heiress to a fortune, but the story is told from 2 perspectives. One of them is the husband who marries her, and he's this huge simp. He basically puts her on a pedestal because she's so beautiful and graceful and all-knowing. And because he has this background where his study is literally about mythology and he's really into stories that are purposely vague and mysterious, you can definitely tell he projects a lot of that onto this woman here. So they're madly in love, but I think part of the appeal is the fact that she told him to promise to never pry into her past. However, the plot begins when she finds out that her estranged aunt is dying, which means that she has to return back to her childhood home, which is called the House of Dreams. And this is going to be the first time that the main guy is going to discover this house as well. And the moment that he's in there, or actually not even stepping inside, but just being on the outside, he feels like this shift in energy. Like something is going on inside this house. It's almost like the house has a life of its own. So it's very like gothic atmosphere. And obviously, since this house has a lot of stories behind it that occurred in the past, there's going to be secrets that he ends up unveiling. So since I'm in the halfway point, we're in the process of finding out what those secrets are. But basically, this girl was into some shady shit in the past. I mean, she was like your typical witchy kind of girl where she loved putting together spells and seeing what would work because she believed that there was like another world out there. And so we get the perspective of her childhood best friend, except it takes place in the past when you see the 2 of them grow up together. And I can already tell this friendship is toxic as hell, but I know that some shit went down because there's a reason why the best friend is not in the picture anymore. So I'm currently in the middle of finding out what that is. A lot of the prose so far has been very dreamy, which I like, but I'm kind of waiting for the ball to drop right now, as in like I want a concrete conclusion from it. Like how much of this is going to be fantasy versus reality. They talk about the 2 of them going to another world, but how much of that is actually true? Because I can't actually tell at the moment whether this would be considered a fantasy or if this girl is just off her rockers. I think it's going to be the reveal and the execution that's really going to make or break this, because I'm kind kind of like on the ride, but I'm a little bit skeptical. This could really be either a 3-star or a 4-star for me, depending on how well the author pulls this off. What I am surprised so far is that I knew coming in that the main guy is basically just a vessel for us to also be an outsider with him to learn more about what's going on with the main girl. But I didn't expect there to be some kind of background story with him too, because it's revealed that a long time ago, he really believed that he had a younger brother. Like, he has these vivid memories of living with a younger brother. And then one day the brother was just gone. And then he asked his parents where his brother was. And his parents were like, what are you talking about? You don't have a brother. And this just like shook him so much. And he still thinks about this brother that never existed. And now that he's in the House of Dreams, he keeps on seeing his brother that isn't actually there. And I think that's so interesting because I want to know what's going on with the brother. Like, is he actually real, or did he just disappear maybe into this other world that the girls have been talking about in their flashback chapters? I'm actually more interested in what's going on in present day than what's going on in the flashback chapters, because I think I have a pretty clear idea of what's going on in the flashbacks. Like, this is clearly a toxic relationship. They're being codependent. The main girl was very toxic to her best friend, and she's gonna do something that maybe banishes her to the other world or traps her somewhere. And then probably in present day, we're gonna see the best friend come back. So if that actually happens, I would feel like that's pretty predictable. So I'm hoping that things shake up, but who knows? I'm like at the halfway point. I'll keep you updated because I'm gonna continue reading throughout my week here in Tennessee. Hello, I am back home from Tennessee and I have some reading updates. First of all, I finished The Last Tale of the Flower Bride on the plane ride home. Overall, I would give it 3.5 stars because I really liked the beginning and the ending, but the middle was such a slog to get through. I had a book club meeting with the other travelers in Thailand, and one of them, Kelly, if you're watching, she described it so accurately with her impressions. She said that it felt like a really sweet dessert that you get to enjoy in the first few bites, but then after a while, it's too much. I think that's the perfect description of the writing because you could tell that the author was trying to be very lyrical and flowery, which I usually like, but I think there's just something about this author's writing that doesn't really click with me because it doesn't feel as natural in the same way that I've read other lyrical books that I've enjoyed. It just felt like it was trying to do too much to the point where it was too abstract and too repetitive, and I was just like, okay, let's move on here. Like, what is actually going on? Like, I need some substance to go along with it. We can't just go off of vibes, but that's what the whole book was. It was just vibes. The main character was all talk and no walk. And I was low-key disappointed by that because it seemed like she was going to be so intriguing and had all these mysterious secrets. And then I realized that she was just a bitch. But she didn't even slay. She was just like a mean girl, and that was it. And usually I would support that if you were actually interesting about it. But she was just some rich bitch with an overactive imagination, and she was just walking around like she was hot shit and trying to start a one-person cult, the one person being the best friend that got along with her when they were childhood friends. And the thing is, she had all the potential to slay too, because the best friend, whose perspective that you get to see in the flashback chapters, she has a very troubled home life because her mom is dating a boyfriend who is very skeevy. Like, he will make these comments that are flirtatious even though she is a child, and he will give lingering looks to her and go out of his way to be a bit more touchy-feely with her. It made me very uncomfortable. Like, I was afraid that something would happen, but fortunately nothing explicit happened. But that was like the fear the whole time, that she wasn't like completely safe. And the shitty thing about her whole situation was that her mom would get jealous of her because the boyfriend was giving more attention to her own daughter, rather than be disgusted and angry at the man that she's dating for being a sketchy ass dude. So the main girl in the book should have just killed the guy. That would have been like the one nice thing that she could have done for the friend. Instead, she was very dismissive of the friend's concerns, which I did not like. That was a huge turn off for me. So I really wanted her to be a badass bitch, but in the end, she was just a bitch. And I know she's not supposed to be a likable character, but again, because the middle was such a slog to get through, I need something for me to grasp onto, and I don't think it was enough. However, I did like the ending. A lot of people who met up for a book club did say that they had predicted what would be revealed, but because I was reading this with my brain turned off, I was just vibing along with the nonsensical vibes of the book. So it was a pleasant surprise to me, and I did like how the ending wrapped up things. And as I was thinking more about the themes of the story, I do feel like the book might not be marketed correctly, because I do think other readers like myself might come into this book with the assumption that this is going to be a fantasy story because of the way that it's marketed as fantasy and literally tagged as fantasy, and because the author has written other fantasy books. But I wouldn't say that's the case. No fantastical or paranormal things happen. It's more like the fantasy and the fairy tale aspects of the book, which, by the way, there are a lot of fairy tales that I reference throughout the book, a lot of parallels to other stories and folklore about spouses that get married or come together, but one spouse has like a secret from the other partner, and they tell the partner to not dig into their past or else that partner will perish. Stories like that, they are referenced a lot throughout the book. And I think the concept of the house, like when the husband visits the house that she grew up in, it seems like it would be a haunted house, but it was really just there for atmospheric purposes. So I feel like in the end, the fantasy and fairy tale aspects were more just like a veneer to cover the ugly reality, because the characters were dealing with shit, and my interpretation was that they were just leaning towards the idea of an alternate reality where things are more magical instead of ugly. And I do like that concept. I think I'm just not a fan of the execution. After that, I read a short book called My Last Innocent Year. This is about a college girl who is spending her final semester in a prestigious New England school. So a lot of her classmates there are on the wealthier side, while she came from a poorer background. She's from New York, and she's the only daughter of an appetizing store owner. And I learned that an appetizing store is a type of store that's commonly run by Jewish families, and it's basically food that generally goes with bagels. So it's stuff like smoked fish or pickled vegetables or cream cheese, which is such a classic New York thing to have in this city. But clearly she comes from a more humble background, so she feels more out of place in this college. She's also dealing with the death of her mother that happened a little bit right after she first arrived on campus. So she's kind of like feeling lost, not really knowing herself. It's like an older coming of age story, and the plot actually begins when she starts an affair with a professor, and of course he's an English professor. Why is it always English professors who are sleeping with their damn students? Literally in every story or TV show that you read about, they're always the English teachers. Something is in the water here, because I thought we were learning about grammar. And what's even messier is that not only is the professor much older, but he's also married. And also she got into this relationship right after the book starts off with her basically being raped by this other dude who I think is like one of the few Jewish students in the school. So she's already dealing with a lot of shit and a lot of baggage. So naturally, her being in this affair with the professor kind of makes sense, because she's feeling so lost already with her family, her upbringing, and now this awful non-consensual encounter with this other dude. Her writing professor makes her feel seen, because he specifically points out how great her writing is and believes in her. And so then she kind of becomes lost in this very ill-advised relationship. And this also takes place in 1998. So around this time, there's a lot of references to the scandal between Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky when they were found out for having an affair as well. So that's like a very obvious parallel to what's going on in this book. I finished it pretty quickly, because what I did like about the writing was that it's very fluid and easy to read, and I wanted to know the tea that would happen with her and the professor. But as I think about the book overall, I am gonna go with 3 stars. I feel like there were a lot of different plot threads and themes that weren't fully explored. They were only briefly touched upon, but it didn't have enough depth for it to emotionally resonate with me. You have the coming of age for college students, you have this self-discovery and identity for this girl, you have this whole Jewish aspect of her background and family, you have her grief grief over her mother, which again, because these things are mentioned, I know that this is supposed to be like a theme in the story, but it doesn't really dive any deeper into that. There's definitely commentary on consent and the power dynamics between a student, a professor, and a younger girl and an older man, but I feel like it wasn't explored well enough for my liking. And in fact, I think the constant mentioning of the Monica Lewinsky scandal, where every few chapters she would overhear other students talking about it, it kind of felt forced. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were talking about it openly when it happened, but to me, it just felt so overt. I think a book that followed all these themes better was My Dark Vanessa, which is also about a girl who gets groomed by her English teacher. Again, always the fucking English teachers, but there were so many references to the type of culture that enables these harmful dynamics and relationships. And I felt like the way that that author tied it into her story was much more subtle and natural and layered. And to read this book in comparison did not hit the mark for me. The main character is very detached to the point where it was hard to connect with her. And I'm sure you could argue that she is detached because she's still figuring out herself. She doesn't know who she is. And that's why she's constantly answering questions with, I don't know. Literally, even with how the book ended, she was still like, I don't know. Like, she never really had like a solid opinion or stance on anything, which again, makes sense for, I suppose, any young girl who is trying to figure herself out in the world. But I feel like there are ways to still show that realism without being frustrating. Because again, in My Dark Vanessa, that bitch was depressed and detached and disassociated as fuck, but the story was still damn good. There was still a very clear narrative arc. And I feel like I got a clearer sense of that character, even knowing that she was detached and had this mental barrier. My Last Innocent Year is a shorter and easier book to read, but I would say it's not as emotionally resonant. My next trip is gonna be in a week from now to LA, so I will update you on the next book that I read.
Sliding doors, just wanna know you more. I hope you wanna be with somebody, spending all of the night moonwalking, and with the view she could see her building. Try to tell her I know I feel it. Keep me floating, I'm on my back. Slow me down when I'm living fast.
Ew, stop. Dude, you're gonna make people click off the video.
Submissive and burrito.
Ew, disgusting.
No, y'all want some of this. Oh, Cindy, yeah.
Ew,
Oh,
stop.
Cindy, yeah. Oh my god, no wonder. It's fucking zoomed in.
I have a reading vlog update. Elias and I have recently both finished an audiobook called Daisy Jones and the Six. This was in preparation for us to watch the Amazon Prime adaptation by Reese Witherspoon. I actually read the book already several years ago, but I read it as like a physical book, and I rated that 3 stars because I was like, this shit is overhyped. I don't see why everyone loved it. I don't see the appeal at all. And then now that I decided to like reread it, you know, before the show, and I decided to listen to it as an audiobook instead. Game changer. That shit really elevates the story.
Which makes me really wonder if you had read like other previous books you rated and gave like 3 stars, if you listened to the audiobook.
Or vice versa, because sometimes audiobooks make the books worse. So it really depends on the narrator. But this one specifically, like you need to listen to it as an audiobook because it's really set up to be more like an audiobook.
It's literally, it's an unexplained experience you have to experience for yourself in order to get it. This is like also a different audiobook because they actually had
voice actors.
They were really good narrators. Every single time they would emphasize something, it would feel like natural instead of like, forced from like a regular audiobook narrator. They would like hold or pause for emphasis, for heavy moments.
Because the whole format of the book is told in the form of like a documentary, the whole thing was actually like a script that people would read off of. It wasn't voice actors just like narrating what was going on in a book. It was them pretending to be these characters that are talking about what happened in their life. So for context, if you don't know, the book is about a fictional rock and roll band that was super popular in the 70s. They were like on the Billboard charts, they were selling out, but then they disbanded, and the documentary goes into the behind the scenes tea.
It's behind the scenes that really make it like the story and the characters instead of like this popular rise to fame.
So the main character is Daisy Jones, who becomes the lead singer of this band, and she is a wild girl, but she's supposed to be iconic. She's supposed to be such a good singer that they had to accept her anyway. And then the main guy is also the lead singer of the band. He had formed it with his brother, and he's like a control freak. Like he wants everything to be done his way. He makes all the decisions. He writes all the songs. And so with her joining their band, that causes a lot of friction. He is also an alcoholic. Because of his alcoholism, that actually caused huge problems for his marriage. But that was in the past, and now he's trying super hard to be a good father and husband. And so with the arrival of Daisy Jones, that threatens him to temptation. She represents the desires that he wants, but it's literally a threat to his marriage. Not just like with substance abuse, but with infidelity, because they have feelings for each other.
Yeah, she basically represents what he can't have or what he could have had in another life.
That is an interesting tension. I guess I just didn't really appreciate it when I was reading it as a book, because I like to enjoy books for the prose. And the way that the book is set up physically, like you can't enjoy for the prose because literally all of it is dialogue. And because it's a documentary with the characters literally talking to you about what happened, it's all telling, not showing. So my problem was evaluating it based on the book, but now that I've listened to it via audiobook, I can enjoy the story so much more. I can like feel the characters. They feel like more real people.
It just added a lot more riz to the story overall. That really elevated everything that I really liked about the story.
I ended up rating the audiobook 5 stars because I just thought everything was done really well in terms of the production and the themes of the story. And you know what I noticed about Taylor Jenkins Reid? She definitely writes stories for like wine moms that are clutching their pearls, and that's why Reese Witherspoon had to adapt this show. But you know what? I'm into the drama, because once I listened to this shit in audiobook, I was like, tea. Every time some shit went down, I was like, tea.
I really liked the beginning and I was really interested, but the middle got me a little lackluster. But the ending, I gotta say, the ending, the last 2 pages of this book brought it home for me. 4 stars. It's how she evolves these characters, especially towards the end, that really gets me.
She tends to use her characters as mouthpieces for philosophies on love and life.
Yeah.
I can see how the Y moms would eat that shit up. They're like, oh my god, that is so true about life. And so we listened to the audiobook, we enjoyed it. Then we watched the show, and at first I wasn't really into the show because I feel like it lost a lot of character nuance that I loved about the book. It showed the main guy's flaws, but it didn't show context or like any of his substance abuse. For someone to come into the show not knowing anything about the main guy, he would be way less sympathetic. And I feel like the main girl on the show, she was a bit more quirky, starry-eyed girl.
500 Days of Summer, like main character energy, to a point where it's just like, girl, you're kind of annoying, chill.
In the book, she felt more raw and like messy. I do wish they were more unfiltered with like the drug addiction and substance abuse, because when you're listening to the show in audiobook, you're like, these characters are not fucking okay. Yeah. But I do think Amazon Prime kind of sanitized it a little bit more because it's Reese Witherspoon. If it was on HBO Max, I feel like it would be a totally different vibe to it. However, I came around to it now that
I actually really like the show. You guys should definitely check out the reaction, because the later episodes, amazing. Especially the ending. They did the ending justice. I actually like the show better than the book because they changed the ending and it was chef's kiss.
I will say I enjoyed the ending as well.
Yeah.
But that's because they adapted the ending accurately. They added a few things, but
Yeah.
it didn't change like the
But it
heart
was-
of the ending.
They
you know?
made it better, and they took that and they expanded into like a whole freaking 45-minute episode. It was great.
Yeah. Basically, we read and watched Daisy Jones and we both enjoyed it. But you like the show better and I like the book better. So with these characters running around in LA, I'm gonna also show you footage of us running around in LA.
Cue the clip.
My friend nostalgia, I found you when I heard the sweet sound of the ones who I once knew so well. In a voice memo from years ago, we were laughing about some nonsense. Oh, how I miss those friends. Circumstances made it so that I'll never see their faces, except for on the internet, where I'll never really know what's going on behind their smile. I mean, I guess I could check in